morning. Still Sunday, yeah, but made it to Reno, so there's that. Hopping in with part 25. I think I might be going crazy. I posted a video showing that comments of mine are being just like erased, not like reported and me told they're reported and taken down, just not there. I looked it up and apparently there's some kind of TikTok glitch where comments sometimes don't save, but and I went back and looked at like other videos and some of them are there, some of them are not. I don't know. And like I try to re-comment on the ones that I know I commented on that are no longer there. And not even the same thing, like random stuff. Like I like cupcakes and singing in the rain makes me feel good. And they just poof into non-existence. So I don't know if I'm losing my mind or not. It also looks like the video that I posted showing you guys is getting hidden, and which probably means these are as well. So I'm going to start posting all of these future videos on Blue Sky. That's the one. Yeah. Okay. We are in DoD policy. We left off right as we got to the needed reforms portion. So without further ado, let's hop in. Needed reforms. Prioritize a denial defense against China. U.S. defense planning should focus on China, and in particular, the effective denial defense of Taiwan. The focus and priority for U.S. defense activities will deny China the first island chain. Require that all U.S. defense efforts, from force planning to employment and posture, focus on ensuring the ability of American forces to prevail in the pacing scenario and deny China a fait accompli against Taiwan. 2. Prioritize the U.S. conventional force planning construct to defeat a Chinese invasion of Taiwan before allocating resources to other missions, such as simultaneously fighting other conflict. And then we move on to increased allied conventional defense burden sharing. This is still in the need reforms. U.S. allies must take far greater responsibility for their conventional defenses. U.S. allies must play their part not only in dealing with China, but also in dealing with threats from Russia, Iran, and North Korea. 1. Make burden sharing a central part of U.S. defense strategy, with the United States not just helping allies to step up, but strongly encouraging them to do so. 2. Support greater spending and collaboration by Taiwan and allies in the Asia-Pacific, like Japan and Australia, to create a collective defensive model. 3. Transform NATO so that U.S. allies are capable of fielding the great majority of the conventional forces required to deter Russia, while relying on the United States primarily for our nuclear deterrent, and select other capabilities while reducing the U.S. force posture in Europe. 4. Sustain support for Israel even as America empowers Gulf partners to take responsibility for their own coastal, air, and missile defenses, both individually and working collectively. 5. Enable South Korea to take the lead in its conventional defense against North Korea. Now we're on implement nuclear modernization and expansion. The United States manifestly needs to modernize, adapt, and expand its nuclear arsenal. Russia maintains and is actively brandishing a very large nuclear arsenal, but China is also undertaking a historic nuclear breakout. 1. Expand and modernize the U.S. nuclear force so that it has the size, sophistication, and tailoring to deter Russia and China simultaneously. 2. Develop a nuclear arsenal with the size, sophistication, and tailoring, including new capabilities at the theater level, to ensure that there are no circumstances in which America is exposed to serious nuclear coercion. And then we move on to increased allied counter-terrorist burden sharing. Transnational terrorism remains a threat to Americans even as we pivot toward Asia. 1. Sustain the military forces needed to deter, prevent, and combat terrorism, but at a sustainable cost in concert with other elements of national power and partner efforts. 2. Prioritize enhancing the capability of allies and partners to take the lead in combating terrorism in their regions. Then this brings us to DoD acquisition and sustainment, A&S. The DoD's ability to acquire and field new and existing technologies is essential to the ability of America's military personnel to fight and win our nation's wars. To succeed in this endeavor, we must optimize the systems and personnel that the department uses, but the inflexible bureaucratic structure and risk-adverse culture that we have developed over the decades makes it difficult to provide the tools that warfighters need at the speed of relevance. The number one problem is the DoD budgeting process, instituted in 1961, that requires acquisition spending to be locked years in advance. Because technologies change so rapidly and requirements can change overnight, this creates situations in which military personnel not only go to war with outdated technology, but also may be fighting with equipment that is less capable than that of their competitors. America owes its military many things, and the most important is the resource they need to survive on the battlefield and carry out the task we need of them. Needed reforms for that. Let's see, how far down does that go? Yeah, we should be able to get through all of those. Okay. Needed reforms. Reform the planning, programming, budgeting, and execution process. 1. Enhance funding and authority for DoD mission-focused innovation organizations and away from program-specific stovepipes that planned for and designed 2 or 3 years earlier may no longer be relevant. This allows the acquisition community to focus on portfolio management and move money around more easily, instead of being locked into inflexible multi-year procurement cycles. 2. The President should expand the recommendations of congressionally mandated Commission on Planning, Programming, Budgeting, and Execution Reform, and develop a strategy for implementing those that the administration considers to be in the best interests of the American people. The Commission's final report is due on September 1st, 2023. 3. Develop legislation or other means of providing funding outside the traditional PPBE process, that is the Planning, Programming, Budgeting, and Execution process, for the prototyping and experimentation of emergency technologies that are deemed essential to modernization and future conflict. Consider creating a fast track for projects that satisfy the most pressing national security needs. 4. Require the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment, the Undersecretary for Research and Engineering, and all service secretaries to conduct night court and use existing authorities to terminate outdated or underperforming programs so that money can be used for what works and will work. Require the undersecretaries and service secretaries to brief the secretary annually on the results. 5. Require the Office of the Secretary of Defense to research and report on the acquisition process used by America's adversaries to improve our understanding of how they are often able to innovate and field new technologies on a faster timeline. Strengthen America's defense industrial base. 1. Replenish and maintain U.S. stockpiles of ammunition and other equipment that have been depleted as a result of U.S. support to Ukraine. This will strengthen the defense industry supply chain and ensure that adequate inventory exists if it is needed for a future conflict. 2. Collaborate with industry to develop a prioritized list of reforms that the DoD and Congress can enact and implement to incentivize industry to help America's military innovative and field needed capabilities. 3. Strengthen the ability of acquisition authorities to engage in multi-year procurements and block buys. This will improve private sector rates of return, thereby incentivizing defense contractors to partner with the government. It will also reduce government overhead by reducing the number of procurement competitions. 4. Prioritize the U.S. and allies under the domestic end product and domestic components requirements of the Build America, Buy America Act. Currently, defense companies are required to manufacture defense items for the U.S. government that are 100% domestically produced and at least 50% composed of domestically produced components. However, there are loopholes that allow companies to manufacture these items overseas. This can create supply chain and other issues, especially in wartime. Manufacturing components and end products domestically and with allies spurs factory development, increases American jobs, and builds resilience in America's defense industrial base. 5. Review the sectors currently prioritized for onshoring or friendshoring of manufacturing, kinetic capabilities, castings and forgings, critical materials, microelectronics, space, and electric vehicle batteries. Evaluate them according to the strategic landscape and expand or reprioritize the list as appropriate. 6. Help small businesses to become medium-sized and large vendors, which encourages a more resilient industrial base and fosters competition. Encourage and plan for durable supply chains for small businesses so they have commercial/private sector customers and are not solely dependent on defense orders, which can be highly specialized, expensive, and irregular. And last, 7, increase internal engagement among small businesses to inform them of DoD's needs and how they could work with DoD to meet national security priorities. Now into optimize the DoD acquisition community. 1. Create incentives to emphasize speed and agility in decision-making for prototyping of program of record starts and terminations. Most bureaucrats would rather follow a checklist and fail than go outside the procedures and win, because failures means negative career repercussions. Senior acquisition leaders should design a system that allow decision makers to stay within the law but bypass unnecessary departmental regulations that are not in the best interest of the government and hamper the acquisition of capabilities that warfighters require. Bypassing more regulations. Guess what? The regulations are there to protect us. Yeah, so no wonder they are cool going against them. 2, under the Secretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment, Undersecretary for Research and Engineering, and all service secretaries should assess their acquisition workforces, determine what additional personnel resources and training they need, and develop implementation plans. The goal is to develop, prototype, acquire, and field required capabilities at the speed of relevance to meet America's pacing threats and maintain a warfighting advantage. 3, this will be the last one, I apologize. Decentralized Defense Acquisitions University, DAU, offerings and expand the DAU mission to include accreditation of non-DoD institutions. The critical shortage of trained and certified acquisitions personnel must be addressed with urgency in order to support DoD missions, objectives, and goals. With the rapid evolution of training and educational technologies, including remote and virtual practices, there is no reason for DAU to maintain a monopoly on the knowledge and certification that are required to perform as acquisition professionals. Further, the cost to private contractors and non-DoD civilians who aspire to such a role limits the supply of trained and certified candidates. DAU has become an unnecessary barrier to entry in a career field that is vital to the DoD mission. All right. Thank you for sticking around. I love your faces. Have a great week, and I will see you tomorrow.